Before the marble, there was only marsh. Between the hills, the water pooled and spread. The Etruscans came and drained the valley flat, and left a muddy field where nothing fed. The early Romans brought their cattle there, and merchants spread their wares on open ground. A marketplace between the Palatine and Capitoline hills without a sound. Of greatness yet just commerce, dust and flies, just farmers haggling under August skies, just the slow accumulation of a place where people came to trade and show their face. But cities grow the way that rivers grow. They cut the channel deeper as they flow, and every generation left its mark until the muddy field shone in the dark. Forum Romanum, where the world came to speak. Forum Romanum, where the strong met the weak, where the orator stood and the Senate decided, where the triumph passed and the crowd divided, where the laws were read and the bodies displayed, where the greatest civilization ever made stood in the open air and said, "This is Rome, this is Rome." Then came the Republic and the rostra's voice, the platform built from prows of captured ships, where Cicero would stand and shake the Senate, and Caesar's body cool between men's grips. Each generation adding marble columns, the temple of Saturn holding Rome's great store. The basilica rose for law and commerce until the marsh was memory and no more. Scipio passed through here in laurel, Hannibal's sword never reached these stones. Caesar bled 300 steps from this spot, Augustus walked these flagstones all alone. Cicero's hands came back here nailed to the rostra, the very word from which he'd shaped the law. The Forum swallowed every Roman story and asked for more, and asked for more. Forum Romanum, where the world came to speak. Forum Romanum, now the stones cannot speak. Where the orator stood, only silence is standing. Where the triumph passed, only shadows are passing. Where the greatest civilization ever made stood in the open air and said, "This was Rome, this was Rome, this was Rome." The marsh waited underneath the marble, the marsh waited all along. And when the marble finally cracked and crumbled, the marsh came back and Rome was gone. First you serve the legions in the field before the Forum teaches you to speak. A Roman earns his
platform with a shield before he learned the Senate's polished Greek. Then Questor, managing the public gold, the lowest rung, the youngest man allowed. You learn the ledgers of the state grown old before you earn the right to speak aloud. The ladder has no shortcuts and no doors that open out of sequence or of turn. Each rung demands the paying of its dues, each step a debt the next step has to earn. The system does not care about your hunger. The system does not care about your fire. The system only counts the years and offices between the man you are and your desire. Cursus honorum, the path of honor laid in stone. Cursus honorum, no Roman climbs this path alone. Questor, aedile, praetor, consul, censor, each rung demanding everything you have. The ladder built to test you and to break you, and only let the worthy reach the top. Cursus honorum, the glory and the cage. Cursus honorum, Rome's defining trap. The aedile manages the city's gains, the grain supply, the temples and the streets. The praetor holds the law within his hands, commands a legion on the empire's edge. Then consul, two men sharing the highest seat, elected annually to lead the state. The fascist carried by the lictor's feet, the ancestors watching from the atrium gate. But outside of the ladder stood one office that the system kept for when the system broke. 6 months of absolute and total power given to one man before the crisis spoke. Cincinnatus called in from his plowing, defeating Rome's enemies in 15 days, returning to his farm without the asking, laying down what other men would never raise. But Sulla took the office without limit and showed the world what dictatorship could be. Cursus honorum, the path of honor laid in stone. Cursus honorum, no Roman climbs this path alone. Questor, aedile, praetor, consul, censor, each rung demanding everything you have. To test you and to break you, and give the worthy man his place in Rome. Cursus honorum, the glory and the cage. Cursus honorum, let Caesar home. The path of honor, the path of honor, every wrong a test, every wrong a warning. Let Rome home. Every citizen of Rome may cast his vote. We make no man a slave to another's choice. The poorest man who wears the Roman note has just as much the right to raise his voice. We organize by centuries, 193 in total, ranked by wealth. Not because the poor man's vote is plundered, but because the stakes demand a certain stealth of wisdom. Those with property at risk decide the wars that property must fund. The man with nothing lost need not be brisk in choosing battles he need not have won. We call the first class first 80 centuries, the men of means who understand the cost of war and peace and consular authority, who know precisely what is won and lost. Comitia centuriata, every Roman has his say. Comitia centuriata, every voice counts on the day. The centuries assemble in the field of Mars, each man casting votes beneath the Roman stars. Democracy in action, Rome at its most just, every citizen included, every voice a must. Comitia centuriata, the people's voice is heard. Comitia centuriata, take us at our word. The first class votes, and if they reach consensus, the election can be called before noon. 193 centuries, but 80 votes decide the tune. The fifth class with the slings and leather straps, the proletari, we call them last. They have their centuries is 5 in total, against the first class 80 standing fast. Here is what the system does not say. The first class votes and usually decides before the second century has its day, before the third class even leaves its sides, before the man who fought in every legion, who bled on every field Rome ever claimed, who paid the price of every Roman season, has cast a single vote or spoke a name. Comitia centuriata, every Roman has his say. Comitia centuriata, as long as wealth leads the way. The centuries assemble in the field of Mars, the wealthy vote and lead before the stars. Democracy in action, Rome at its most just, every citizen included, as long as you're discussed. Comitia centuriata, the people's voice is heard. Comitia centuriata, if you can afford the word. Every citizen may vote, every citizen may vote, every citizen may vote. From the walk out on the sacred mount, when plebeians left the city to its knees, that patricians learned what soldiers really count, when the army disappeared among the trees. They gave the people one inviolable man, whose body could not be touched by any hand, whose toe stayed open through the night and day, whose single word could make the Senate stay. Veto, I forbid the smallest word in Rome that stopped a consul's order in its tracks. The tribune standing between power and the bone of every plebeian breaking under tax. Tribunus plebis, the people's sacred shield. Tribunus plebis, throwing the Senate field, sacrosanct and sleepless door forever open. The voice that said veto and made the mighty yield. Tribunus plebis, born to serve the weak. Tribunus plebis, until the strong learn how to speak. For generations it held what it was made for, the patricians learning where the limits lay. until the Gracchi saw what it was good for and used the people's shield a different way. Tiberius pushing land reform through force by passing the Senate with the people's vote. The Tribune as a weapon, not a course of last resort, but now a hand around Rome's throat. The Senate answered with the clubs they swung, and Tiberius died and Gaius died the same. And every strong man after read what Sulla and Caesar learned, the Tribune bore their name. The office built to whisper, veto softly, became the trumpet sounding civil war. What Romans made to guard the lowest citizen became the key that opened every door to power that the founders never pictured, to armies marching under sacred names, the Tribune shadow falling over everything, until the Republic burned inside its flames. Tribunus Plebs, the people's sabered shield. Tribunus Plebs, though on the Senate feared, sacked with saint and sleepless door, forever open the voice that said, veto in me the mighty yield. Tribunus Plebs, born to serve the weak, became the sword that split Rome at its seams. Tribunus Plebs, the best of what Rome dreamed, became the worst of what ambitions. Outside the window, Rome is burning again. Another general marching on another wall. Horace pours the wine and lifts his pen and writes about the afternoon before the fall. Do not ask what the gods have planned for us. The stars keep their secrets well. Strain your wine and cut your expectations short, and live inside the hour where you dwell. Tomorrow is a shore we cannot see. The sea between is dark and full of war. But here the cup, the fire, the friend, the tree seize the day. What is today is yours. Carpe Diem, seize it before it goes. Carpe Diem, no one living really knows what waits beyond the winter or the battle, what the gods have written for your name. Seize the day, the wine is on the table, the afternoon is golden in the frame. Carpe Diem, not despair but clear eyes open. The present is the only thing that's real. Carpe Diem, seize the day before it closes, and let tomorrow come when you can feel. He was not a fool who closed his eyes to war. He fought at Philippi on the losing side. He dropped his shield and ran, he sat as a march, and lived to write what running and survive. A man who preached the golden middle way, had stood where everything could have been lost, and chose the afternoon, the friend, the babe,
exactly what that choosing crossed. Not cowardice, clear sight of what endures, not blindness, knowing what a day is worth. While Caesar's heirs divided up the world, he counted what was beautiful on earth. The Nos Maiorum said, live for what was past. Lucretius said, nothing real survives. Horace said, the present is what lasts, the only truth that fits inside our lives.
Three answers to the same impossible.
Three poets standing in the same fire's glow. One chose the ancestors, one chose the void, one chose the afternoon and let it go.
Carpe diem,
Seize it before it goes.
carpe diem.
No one living really knows
What waits beyond the winter on a battle?
what the gods have risen for your name. Seize the day, the wine is on the table, the afternoon is golden and the fray.
Carpe diem,
The republic fell around till the empire rose, and still the sun came through.
carpe diem.
The only Roman answer that still makes sense in everything we do.
He said the thing that separates the man from the barbarian beyond the wall is not the sword or legion's battle plan, but what a mind becomes when given all.
The grammar and the rhetoric and the law, philosophy and history and verse.
The orator who stands without a flaw before the crowd and makes the universe
Bend toward the good, the just, the beautiful.
That is what Rome was always meant to produce,
Not conquest, cultivation, the dutiful
refinement of the human into use.
Humanitas,
The fully formed and living mind,
humanitas.
the best that Rome could find in every man who learned to speak with purpose,
Who read the Greeks and made their wisdom rose. Humanitas,
not born but slowly fashioned
from every book and argument and stone. Humanitas,
Cicero's great vision, the human being finally coming home. He wrote it all on duty, on the laws, on friendship, on old age, on what the state required from men who understood the cause was larger than their comfort or their fate. The new man from Arpinum proved the point, that birth was not the measure of the mind, that words could set a whole republic's joint back into place if Rome were so inclined. But Rome was not inclined for very long. The clubs came out, the proscription lists were drawn. The most articulate voice in Rome's long song was silenced on the very rostrum. His hands came back to the forum nailed in place, the platform where he'd shaped the Latin word, the final argument without a face, the last of his Humanitas interred. And yet the book survived Deifices, the Tuscule and disputations on the shelf. The dream of the cultivated man persists long after Rome forgot to know itself. Humanitas, the fully formed and living mind. Humanitas, the best that Rome could find in every man who learned to speak with purpose, who read the Greeks and made their wisdom Rome's. Humanitas, they silenced the believer, but could not silence what the believer known. Humanitas, Cicero's great vision, outlive the hands they nailed beside his bones.
I have seen what victory has done to us. I have watched the legions come home rich and trade the plow for couches made of gold and call it civilization's gift. They carried back the statues of the Greeks and hung them in their retria like gods. They hired tutors speaking foreign tongues and called their fathers barbarians and clods. I wore one toga all my life. I ate the food my own field grew. The ancestors built Rome on iron backs, and we are trading iron for what they knew. This is not Rome, this is something else. This is the rot that comes when armies win. Luxury of the poison dressed as beauty, luxury of the enemy within. The marble floors, the fish ponds, the perfume. The Greeks we conquered now conquer us in turn. Luxury, I name it for what it is, the fire that will make this city burn. I was censor. I had the power once to strip a senator of his rank and name for conduct falling short of Roman virtue, and I used it without hesitation or shame. But you cannot censor what the whole state wants. You cannot fine a city for its greed when every man of standing has a villa, and every villa has 100 mouths to feed. With slaves brought back from every war, displacing every farmer, every son who built this empire with his honest hands, and now is nowhere left beneath the sun. The Mos Maiorum is not decoration, it is the bone beneath the body skin. Pull it out and dress the corpse in marble, and tell me where the Roman ends and sin begins. I am Cato, I have said it plainly. just remember what it was built on. This is not Rome, this is something else. This is the rot that comes when armies win. Luxuria, the poison dressed as beauty. Luxuria, the enemy within. The ancestors are watching from their boxes, the wax faces turning from the wall. Luxuria, I name it for what it is, the first step and the last step of the fall.
He left in March when the levee came around, the third time in as many years he's gone. I keep the field as best as one can keep, a field alone from darkness until dawn. The children help, but children's hands are small, and Hannibal burned the southern farms last year. The smoke was visible from where I stood, and I did not tell the children what I feared. The man from the city came again last week with money and a document to sign. He said the debt had grown beyond my means, and smiled the way they smile when something's mine. The field my father's father cleared, the field that Rome has disappeared. I held it through the levee and the burning, I held it through the silence and the debt. But what one woman holds against an empire is less than what an empire can forget. The field that made the legions is now the field that feeds the rich man's dream. The ground Rome built its glory on is not as permanent as it would seem. He came home once between the Spanish campaign and Scipio needed men again. He walked the field and did not speak for hours, and left before the first of autumn's rain. The slaves work now on what were Roman fields, their labor cheaper than a citizen's wage. How does a free man feed his family, competing with a slave upon a stage? Tiberius Gracchus saw it, saw the empty farms, the city filling fast with men like mine who came home to find nothing, and understood that nothing ever lasts. He tried to give it back, they killed him for it. They killed his brother too and called it law. And I am still here holding what remains of what was ours before what I just saw. The field my father's father cleared, the field that Rome has disappeared. I held it through the levee and the burning, I held it through the silence and the debt. But empires do not notice what they're losing until the men who built them start to forget. the city fills with men who have no home. Alter the ground that grew the republic is now the ground that's swallowing Rome.
By a lamplight on the German frontier, the rain comes through the leather of the tent. The most powerful man the world has ever seen is writing notes to no one for no one's benefit. You do not control the battle or the storm. You do not control what other men will do. You only control the quality of your response, and that is everything. That is all of you. The Stoics said it first in dusty Athens. Zeno on his porch, Epictetus in his chains, and Marcus wrote it down in freezing darkness while managing an empire in the rain. Meditatio, the emperor alone. Meditatio, the most powerful man unknown, even to himself, until he writes it down. The philosophy that holds the self together when everything outside is coming down. Meditatio, what you cannot control, release it. What you can control, let that be enough. Meditatio, the inner citadel is standing even when the outer world turns rough. Here is the paradox he never solved. The man who preached detachment ruled the world. The man who said desire brings only suffering had every human wanting at his word. The man who wrote that death was nothing fearful sent 50,000 men to meet it every year. The man who said the present was sufficient could not stop the future from appearing here. He was not a hypocrite, he knew it, he wrote about it in the darkest hours. The gap between the teaching and the living was where he spent his philosophical powers. Between the mos maiorum and Lucretius, between the duty and the godless void, between the Carpe Diem and the darkness, Marcus Aurelius built what time destroyed. Inner citadel, the self that cannot be touched by fortune, failure, loss or death. The only Rome worth building is the one that stands inside a single human breath. Meditatio, the emperor alone. Meditatio, the most powerful man unknown, even to himself, until he writes it down. The philosophy that holds the self together when everything outside is coming down. Meditatio, what Rome built outward in its marble